Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Steve Laborda. Steve is an expert and practitioner in B2B sales and marketing excellence with over 15 years of experience in the specialty chemical industry. As CEO of Value Biz Booster, he helps teams fully realize the potential of value-based selling to improve profitability and growth. So with that, Steve, welcome.
Thanks a lot, Nick, for the kind introduction. I'm really happy to be here and to share some of the insights around value selling and how really to get that into the DNA of your organization and to make a champion organization out of value selling. You will see in the presentation in a minute that many companies have started with value pricing and it is not successful. And this is going back to the point that maybe the sales organization isn't ready to take it up on the field. So I'm going to talk about this in the coming minutes. And we're going to mainly focus on the challenges, obviously, but also how to make this approach really part of your organization. So as I said, we're going to talk about the challenges. We're going to talk, of course, about how to tackle it. And I'm going to give an example how practically you can do that in your organization. And we're going to walk through that in a minute. So before we start, I would like to kind of take a little bit the temperature in the room and see what are your current challenges. And therefore, there is a little poll on menti.com. So for those who are not yet familiar with it, you can just open menti.com. It will be also in the chat window. You can just click on the hyperlink. And when you are there, you get prompted to enter a code, and you can then enter the 7-digit that you see on the top right here, so the 49935662, and you will be able to answer. And while you are answering, we will be able to see the answers live. So let me just, I hope you can now see the window.
So for the audience, we just enter the code on the screen, correct?
Exactly. When you're in menti.com, you enter the code which is mentioned here that I'm highlighting right now.
Fantastic.
So here we see the first answers. So let's give the chance for a few more people to give an answer, and then we're going to recap. Okay, so great. I think it is quite interesting, and I think if you look yourself, you will see that there are very similar challenges set in different words, but one of the key things are related, of course, to the buy-in, either from the sales teams or the management, which can be linked, for instance, at also the confidence of sales forces working on it, or the lack of resources, as you can see. And on the other side, it's all about understanding the value and the needs of your customers and to quantify or estimate those challenges. I think that summarizes most of it. There are much more, but I think it's related to that. And obviously, also competition is an important one. But I'm going to show you in the coming slides then 2 levels of challenges. And I'm sure you will recognize all these challenges. So they are external and internal. And so on the external one, nothing new. Let's say since few months, we got some new stuff early this year, which is good enough for the next years, I suppose. But we had already VUCA, yeah, with the volatile, uncertain times. We had already signs of economical slowdown last year, and then came the COVID, which kind of accelerated the whole challenge, which brought us kind of a new normal with mainly virtual interaction, and that brings obviously a lot of challenges with interacting of customers. It made also struggle about pricing, and I have one great example on the picture you see on the top right, where you can buy for 3,999 euro toilet paper, and then you get a free diamond. Yeah, of course, not all the products are like that, where you can then give a diamond away while selling your tons of chemicals, for instance. But this is the new normal in a sense, and I had to make this little funny note because we have enough stress, but we need to have fun as well. And so these are the challenges that we are anyway working on an external perspective that we need to deal with. And what you realize is obviously that value creation and value capture, as well as differentiation, is really key in this environment. But of course, you have the internal challenges which make this value creation and capture not that straightforward. Because for value selling, you need obviously to have a good interaction between sales and marketing. And in many organizations, we still see these silos between these two departments, where actually they are talking about the same topic, talking about customers and markets, but they are talking in two different ways. And that is a big challenge. And there you need to solve this. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in the approach, how to get your value selling in the DNA. Then, as you mentioned as well in the poll, this not the buy-in of the sales organization, and the result of it typically is that even, let's say, marketing is making great ammunition packages and preparing value-based pricing guidance and so forth. Still, sales is using a cost-plus approach in many cases. And then on the other side, internally, the management, of course. I mean, you might have then started an initiative around value selling, value pricing, and of course, management is asking, okay, what's happening? What is the progress? How much profitability did we get on top? And this, not to have this passion to wait for the results is, of course, another challenge. And so you need to accelerate your initiatives and get it running properly with a great buy-in of the salespeople. And finally, one that has been shown as well in the poll is the lack of confidence. And this typically is really due to a gap in competencies as well of the sales forces, or also not really seeing what is the value of doing value selling with their customers. And this is elements that we're going to talk a bit later, which are really critical to answer. So these internal challenges, you need to work on it to make it successful. I mean, the external, you have less influence, obviously, but the internal one is the one you can work on. And that's why it's so critical. So I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But let's have a look. Does this situation sound familiar? Trying to give you a slightly other picture. And I have seen that at many customers recently, is that organizations are investing a huge amount of money in value selling, either tools, trainings, and they see a very low adoption rate and usage rate, even after 1, 2, 3 years. And they wonder what is happening. Typically what they see, as I already highlighted, is marketing is working quite well with it. They understand the principles. They have, of course, their own little challenges to understand what is exactly the value, but they're able to provide some ammunition packages. But they are wondering on the other side that actually nobody is using it. So it creates frustration, misunderstanding, and of course, salespeople are not really actively using it. And you see that maybe some early adopters are doing it and they are fighting and struggling to make value selling, but you don't have a wide acceptance for it. And as mentioned, you have then on top the management asking every month about the development, where you then are in a very uncomfortable situation where they're asking about the ROI and asking to see the additional EBIT or the profitability generated. And typically you can only show marginal results. And that, of course, is a very challenging situation. So the question is, how do you get out of this situation? And so if you bear with me, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to bring up just here a very simple, basic slide about the different ways to price or to sell. And I'm sure you all know them. There's simply really with price cost perspective. There's a performance one and there's a value one. Obviously, the cost plus, if you want, is really easy to use, but it's very internal centric and not really profit optimal. The performance one is competition centric. Yeah, so you're comparing yourself to others typically. You have some product differentiation, but not optimal. And it's always kind of making a benchmark towards your competitors. And finally, the value one is the one we are focusing on today. Is really profit optimal. It's focusing on the customers. But there's a high initial effort, obviously, to build the customer discovery and understand the customer needs. And don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying that there's the only one, which is the Saint Graal, which is value selling. I'm just saying that for the places where you can capture and create value, you should be using value selling and value pricing. But of course, there are many places where other pricing methods are used. So what I would like just briefly to do is to have a little poll with you and to see what is your typical pricing method that you are using currently. So we're going to move to the next poll in a minute. Just bear with me. So now you know how it works. So you simply go to menti.com. Just be careful. It's another code as you see on the screen. So it is 5848126. And there you will be able to vote what is the pricing method that you are mainly using in your organization. So let's get still some few persons to vote. So anyone more who wants to vote to tell us? No worries, it's completely anonymous, so we don't know who is voting and who is answering. So even you are doing cost plus, happy to see your answer. But anyway, so this is currently, so it's really interesting that it looks like that most of you are doing value-based, and then performance and then cost plus. Of course, the question is always, do you think you are doing it that way, or are you really doing it that way? I'm going to show you the answers that we got from a study that Simon and Kurer did last year. And that was focusing obviously on the chemical industry, but still 4 out of 5 companies do primarily pricing rather on price rather than on value. So interesting, the results of the poll here, which is kind of completely the opposite. But of course, this is just a picture out of the chemical industry. So as you realize, I like the poll, so I'm just doing the next one, because you see we have talked a lot about challenges and the way of pricing and what are the external and internal challenges. Now, of course, I would like to hear from you, what do you see as being success in the context of value selling or value pricing in your organization? So now you know you are experts in menti.com, so you just go again to menti.com and enter the new code. And let's have a look. What does success mean for you in the perspective of value selling and value pricing? Okay, a few seconds still to provide some answers if you like. Okay, so if we try to summarize, I think there's one point which is, of course, related to higher prices, which means, of course, optimally higher profits or improved profits at least. There's a topic of differentiation. There is elements of having also customer satisfaction and partially also customer loyalty. And of course, translating the value created or the possible captured value into the price. And one important element is obviously the value perception, which is really key in value selling. And then there's one which it's about that all the employees think about value creation and value capture. And I think that's a very important element that many companies underestimate. They put all the pressure on the sales organization and forget that actually value selling is something that should concern the whole organization. And that is really critical. And I think that's why it's so important to get it into the DNA of your organization. So let's go back to the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for your input so far and your active participation. So if we look now at the approach, you will get more details in a minute, but what does the approach needs to be? I mean, don't forget that even though the whole organization needs to look at value selling and needs to be all working together at unison towards the customers to create and capture value, still the main target audience of value selling internally is the sales organization. And so even they are not running on the field nowadays, but they are running from one virtual session to another. They have other challenges to manage, to make their budgets, to reach the targets and everything. So overall, the approach to get your organization understanding the need of value selling and using it in the organization is really to keep it simple. So for those who know me, I'm really someone who loves this KISS approach. Yeah, keep it stupidly simple. It needs to be very simple. Don't make huge theories about it, and that's why also it will need to become practical in a minute. But it does. You need to do it really in simple terms. It needs to be tangible. It needs to be concrete as well, so that everything what you try to get towards your sales organization when you're talking about value selling needs to be really tangible and on the job. So take their own examples, their own projects to make it happen. Typically, I have seen that when you go to certain trainings, you get very strange requests to do value selling on selling some grounds or some houses or a pencil or whatever. Salespeople, they don't have time for that. Get them close to their problems, to their challenges. And obviously, no big bang. The methodology, you need to have it in a scalable manner, and to be able to be built up over time, so that you are able to build the capabilities of your team and the skills step by step. Because don't forget, if you overwhelm them, they will feel it's too complicated and they will forget quickly and go back to a cost-plus approach. So to summarize, it needs to be simple, practical, and step by step. But how are you going to tackle it? And from my experience, I'm going to share this with you, is I have seen this approach to be very successful. Typically in an organization, you have a share fair of people who don't really know, which don't have an opinion. Should they not do value selling? You have out of the bell curve, you have something like 10 to 15% of people who are completely against it. And then you have 15% typically who are kind of really early adopters and excited about value selling. So my recommendation is take those ones, use them as ambassadors, coach them so that they really can work on their own cases. They can really get an acceleration around their cases. So of course you will need some training if needed to build up the competencies, but do coaching and not only trainings, because you will see that training is forgotten so quickly. Then they go back to their customers and then they get their first challenges and they don't know how to handle it and they fall back to their old habits of working on cost plus. And finally, share best practices through these ambassadors to the rest of the organization. This is something that has a fantastic effect on the engagement of the rest of the organization, this peer-to-peer communication. And we're going to go through briefly these 3 steps. And how do you build an ambassador organization? Because typically it's not like people are waving at you and say, I want to be an ambassador. So of course you need to have your eyes and ears open and understand and assess, in a sense, in the background, the people and cherry pick them who could be the early adopters. Then you need, of course, to build up their own capabilities, because they might be having the right mindset, but maybe not the right tools to do value selling, or having the right tools, but not yet completely the full mindset. So you need to work on that and then create an atmosphere of cross-fertilization, meaning you will have few ambassadors. They have all various challenges, and another one or the team member might have the answers. So don't reinvent the wheel. Try them to work together to help each other with their solutions. And that works fantastically, I have to say. So then the second challenge, obviously, is you will hear all the time, we have done it always that way. So always sales trying to go back to the old-fashioned way because they have maybe done it 20, 25 years that way. So you need to make the cases as concrete as possible and really to quickly show the impact of these value selling pilots, if you want, because that will allow your ambassadors as well to communicate internally how beneficial it is to do value selling. And of course, across the world, top to bottom approach, as top management, as middle layers of management, you need to challenge the status quo of thinking of this team, so that even within the ambassadors, you might have people who might fall back and say, yeah, this is, we have done it always that way. So you need to kind of let them think slightly out of the box. And to build up the confidence of this group, you need also to build up their capabilities. And ideally, that works very well through coaching, so that you really work with them either on one-to-ones or on team coachings to really troubleshoot their challenges. And then, as I mentioned, share the glory and dilute the pain. So when we say sharing best practices, it's also about learning from the failures. So share as much as possible from the experience. Of course, it's nicer to share with the rest of the organization the success stories, but also share the learnings, because that failures can happen to every single sales rep during the attempt to do value selling. Yeah. So don't reinvent the wheel as well. So try to keep it simple, really. Share as much as possible the knowledge already in place, and don't let the sales guys feel they are alone. So you need to really get the team becoming a learning team. So how to make that happen in a sense? Yeah. You might say, okay, you have the ambassadors, you have some early adopters, but how do you get that scaled at the end? Because you have the ambassadors, but then you have all the rest, the whole tail of the organization to get towards value selling. So I said the first step we talked already is really to build these champions, these early adopters. So who will have the right motivation, the right mindset, and the right skills. You build their competencies with the trainings, with the best practice sharing, with the coaching and on the jobs. And finally, you get them moving towards the trainer, or better said, the coach approach, so that they become the coach of another group of salespeople, so that they can create traction with the success stories and increase their engagement. And I have seen that this is working very well to make it scaled up, because that will also allow you from a resource perspective. At the beginning, you might have an external coach to support your ambassadors, to bring in the knowledge. But then later on, when you scale it up, you can't have as many external coach helping your organization, taking care of 10 or 20 salespeople. So the best way to make that happen is to get these ambassadors, based on their capabilities, obviously, to become the coach and coach the rest of the teams. So here I wanted just to briefly share with you how a such coaching journey could look like. Of course, this is very high level and basic. This needs then to be tailor-made depending on your needs, but typically you have a kickoff, which is really important to align expectation and really define the targets, the target customers and the target projects. Because there also you will see that one of the big failures while value selling pilots or let's say initiatives are failing is that salespeople are selecting the wrong customer cases. You need to look at the buying behaviors. You need to look at in what phase of the sales cycle those cases are. Because as an example, if you take a case where you are already in the negotiation phase, and all along you have done something very transactional on a cost-plus approach, it will be really hard at the negotiation point or just before the negotiation point to change the whole strategy towards value selling. And unfortunately, I have seen that too many times happening. And the organization then tell you, yeah, value selling doesn't work. So you need to be very aware of in which stage of the sales cycle you are. And ideally, you are as early as possible. It doesn't mean that you need always to take innovations. Yeah, it can be existing portfolios, but it can be also challenging the portfolio by adding services, for instance, which can be combined with the products. For instance, if we talk about industrial or chemical customers. But so what is going to happen when you have done that? Let's say have done the right selection of the customers and the projects you believe, is that of course you make it along the sales cycle, so you make it along the customer visits. So you prepare your sales reps to really define the expectations of this meeting, to target the customer, to plan the next customer call, and really, let's say, coach them on possible questions, how to get to the value discovery and to assess the value. And of course, you do a debriefing afterwards, and you repeat that, of course, many times. And then in between, you share best practices across the team, which means they're not sharing also only the best practices, but you are also sharing the challenges, obviously, where some others in the team might have some answers. And then you have some small webinars, a bit like here, where you are sharing some brain snacks, where you are sharing some new tools, some insights, some tips and tricks that have been collected during the prep and debriefing calls. And then you repeat that as many times as you need it with the ambassadors. And I have to say that has been really a great way how to make value selling successful. So we are now almost at the end of my presentation. And before wrapping up, I would like you to give the opportunity in another menti.com in a minute to write down your takeaway of today's presentation. I have seen that this is very helpful as well to kind of take away, at least to write down what did you take out of the half an hour I have been talking. And I'm really curious to see what are your takeaways here. So now I said you are professionals of menti.com, yeah. So you just go there on menti.com and you use the 7-digit code here, 5455694, and you just enter your key takeaway of today. And after that, I'm going to wrap up briefly. So a few seconds still to add your okay, last chance before I wrap up. Okay, so as you see, I would say well summarized. So really to get your organization successful in value selling and getting it really under the skin or into the DNA, you need really to have a simple approach. It needs to be pragmatic, step by step. You need to allow it to be scalable. That's why don't start with 100% of your organization and really make an ambassador organization, because that will facilitate also your success, because you will take the people who are already minded towards value selling and will take up maybe some of the uphill battles easier than if you take someone who doesn't really know or is not even motivated by it, and multiplicate the communication then towards the rest of the organization as kind of peer-to-peer communication, which has much more value if a salesperson is making a testimonial and sharing success stories than if someone from marketing or from a corporate function who is in charge of this program is then talking about it. So thanks a lot for this. So my last slide now to wrap up. I can't highlight it enough. Keep it stupidly simple. So really think about kiss, kiss, kiss. If it helps, think about me. I'm a French guy, and French guy like kiss, yeah, to kiss. So that's a little bridge that I share always, and then people remind it. So yes, as you said, part of your takeaways, it needs to be rather simple, because don't forget, salespeople have their operative and admin burden. They have other focuses, so they don't have time to read long theories and to go deeply and learn a lot. It needs to be crisp. It needs to be easily understandable, so that they can almost apply it instantly. And that needs to be kind of supported through the coaching, so that you can kind of bring back all the time the key elements that they need to take care of in a way that it is really on the job, so that it is all the time relevant for them, because it will be a win-win situation for them. Because if you let them work on a value selling case and they learn on it, first of all, you build up the capabilities, and they earn some revenue, some profitability, which brings them closer to their budget and to their targets. So don't forget that. So that's something which helps a lot. And really, the coach approach is really critical, because using the ambassadors, which makes your life at the beginning a bit easier, will also make it a bit easier later on when you then scale it up, because you have already your champions, and you can then spread them across the organization and build further the competencies. And the last point is really share the glory and dilute the pain, because this is something that is often forgotten. Many organizations think that the success stories are spread across the organization. Don't forget, bad news spread much faster than good news. So don't forget to almost over-communicate the positives and the success stories. But as said, within the team, don't forget to share the challenges as well, so that they can learn from those challenges and those failures from each other. So that was the webinar that I wanted to share with you. So thanks a lot, everybody, for your attention. And as last, so I would like to give you the opportunity to download the free ebook, the 8 Ultimate Tools for Value-Based Selling, which is an ebook where you can download through the QR code here. So just by putting your phone there and opening your camera, you will be able to get access to it. Don't worry, the presentation will be shared. So if you don't have time now to do it, you will get access later on. So, and now I'm handing over to Nick, who is taking the last part of the presentation before we move to the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for sharing his insights. And I'm going to leave that screen up there for a split second longer, just so people can grab that QR code. And we've had a few questions come in during the session, so there's still plenty of time to enter them in the right-hand panel on your screen. A quick reminder, complete the 10-second survey when exiting today's webinar, and you'll be entered into a raffle to receive a copy of Dollarizing Differentiation Value. Now, to give you a couple more minutes to enter your questions, just a quick word on leverage point. So Steve just spent the last 40 minutes talking about the ways that you can implement a successful value selling strategy that helps you get the most out of your value pricing efforts that you're doing. Here at Leverage Point, we offer a SaaS solution that creates interactive digital value propositions that help sales teams convey this value messaging in a powerful customer-specific way. And how does it work? Well, pretty simple. First, your product marketing, pricing team members, you're going to go build custom branded value models within the tool that let you create a value proposition that helps sales tell a story. Then you can publish that value proposition into a cloud-based library that's accessible by every sales rep in your organization to customize in real time for each customer and prospect's needs. Finally, beginning with the first sales call, sales teams can modify the customer's baseline data in real time in order to create a unique business case to buy that the prospect or customer can leverage internally to carry the deal forward. Now, early in the sales process, these value propositions are really helpful in call prep, building sales confidence, qualifying opportunities, and also just engaging customers in general. As you get towards the middle of the sales process, these value propositions provide customer value analyses, and these are really important consultative selling tools that address challenges when you get to the pre-sales stage. Finally, as you get into the purchase and decision stage of the sales cycle, the value proposition gets transformed along with the customer's data into a shared business case, which is collaboratively agreed upon between the sales team and the customer sponsors. And that can serve as the buyer's internal financial justification of purchase, and it becomes a huge asset in the sales team's price negotiation. Now, who wins? So leverage point value props can be linked directly into Salesforce and can be downloaded to PDF or PowerPoint at any time for a personalized leave behind. On average, our clients see 5 to 15% higher close rates and 5 to 25% higher prices when using leverage point value props. So if any of that sounds interesting and you'd love to see our SaaS tool in action, feel free to indicate that in the post-webinar survey, and we'll set you up with a custom demo. So now for the Q&A, and just to get the most popular one out of the way, yes, the webinar is recorded, and we're going to email you those slides by end of week. It usually takes a day or two to just get the video buttoned up, but that will be sent over to you shortly. And we've got a few questions coming in, so I guess I'll start with this one. So Steve, how do I get upper management to focus on value metrics? I think it's in reference to that slide earlier where you compared them to other types.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you think about top management, is it value metrics or in general metrics, yeah, or key KPIs? It's about growth, profitability, or in many cases, profitable growth. And so that's one way, of course, to look at it. You can't always measure those that simply, but of course, you can look at other elements as well, which is like customer satisfaction, customer loyalty as well, understanding really on let's say customer satisfaction level, do they feel that we create value, and is the price fairness there? So that is a way to measure it. And of course you can measure in a very basic way the number of cases that the teams are kind of targeting to be value based. Because obviously you can't translate everything in value-based for every single customer, because you need also to in a value-based case to focus on the customer. And if this customer has a buying behavior which is more towards a pricing seeker, it will be hard to do value capture. And don't forget, yeah, I always talk about one customer, but in the meantime we're talking about between 6 and 9 decision-making person or influencers on the customer side. So you need to be well aligned from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, with regards to, I think earlier you mentioned, package of ammunition for the sales team. Can you just briefly go over some of the key elements, like what elements would go into arming your sales team with what they need to be successful on a call?
Yeah, and there I think that the best actually as a marketing person is not to do it how it is done typically, meaning that as a marketing person you start to brainstorm among marketers to ask what could salespeople need or want to sell value selling. But go and ask your sales guys. So that's the first thing to do. But as example, what needs to be there in a sense is, for instance, some standard open questions for the discovery phase per application, to help them to not to say that they go to an interview and having a script where they just go through the script, but that they have a basis to start with if they are not that confident, so that they can start in an easy way. So that's an important part. Obviously, they need to really have this questioning technique. So really, this is really, I think, the question part. So this sample of questions, this database is really important. Obviously, when they are in the later stage, they need to have a value calculator. in whatever form, ideally. Yeah, but some companies are starting with Excels, which is very painful. But I mean, leverage point obviously is one approach to do so, that they can really calculate the value and also communicate it and even validate it, because that's often kind of forgotten, so that they talk to the customer and tell that's the value that you are getting, and they forget to ask the question, is it really like that? Yeah, and hence you don't get the perceived value of the customer if you don't ask for it. And then the other part is really to kind of getting them to understand what are the value drivers, so to find out what is really the key value driver that makes the customer feel the value. Yeah, I think that are the most important ones. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's a great point of capturing that the ability to capture that real-time feedback is something that we feel strongly about here at Leverage Point, because it allows you to further refine your value hypotheses, both during that opportunity and future ones. So you mentioned earlier that you see companies that claim to sell on value, but they might not really sell on value. So how common is this? And how would you make that distinction?
I mean, let's put it this way. I don't have an exact number, yeah, because I mean, I don't have statistics to prove that. But you saw the Simon and Kurer one, which is telling, I mean, 4 out of 5, so which is a huge number. And I would say this is often the case, so that depending who you ask in an organization, you will hear different answers. But some people, just by saying, yeah, they're able to ask a little premium on the price, they say they do already value-based. But they don't really talk to customers. They don't really look at customer needs in a detailed way. Because the answer to you, yeah, they know what the customer wants, and they're already, I can tell you, it's not value-based, because the customer should be at the center of everything when you do value-based selling, actually.
Makes sense. So another good question is, how would competition-based pricing fit into this framework? Is that something you see often as well?
I mean, this competition pricing is something which is interesting. I mean, sometimes this competition pricing is more performance-based. So that is something which still makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So if you are having a product which is able to provide 20% higher performance compared to your competition, yeah, so you can ask for 20% more. Yeah, very bluntly. But where the challenge is when the competition pricing is kind of more driving towards price wars, right? When the competitor is decreasing the prices on one customer case, and then you are starting to underprice just to get those ones. So it's the unconstructive way of doing competitive pricing, in a sense. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, that happens still a lot, in a sense. So not to use it to increase prices, but to justify internally why they should decrease the prices.
Makes sense. So we've got a couple on the ambassador organization. So I guess a good way to summarize it would be, who should be in the ambassador organization? What functions and seniorities, among other things, would you look for?
From a role perspective or department perspective, from a department perspective, I would say, of course, there should be most salespeople, but don't forget the other functions, in a sense, which are needed in value-based selling. So ideally, at least you have some marketers as well, because you will have to have the value-based pricing. You might have the setup in the tools to be ready and so forth. It might be key account managers as well. Yeah, so it depends a bit how your organization is set, in which industry you are playing, but it should be a cross-functional effort. Let's put it that way. And the ambassadors needs to be at different levels in the organization as well, because those ambassadors are kind of little spies, in a sense, to do some engagement or change management across the organization. So you need to be able to get various layers. So ideally, you mix between sales reps, sales managers, sales directors, for instance, and some marketing managers, for instance, or business managers, depending how your organization is set. But cross-functional, it should be also across the globe, ideally. So don't just make, if your headquarter is in Germany or in the US, don't take just people in your headquarter. Yeah, spread it already, because think about the scale-up phase where you will then need to go closer to the regions and to other countries. So you need to have this proximity, not only regionally, but also culturally.
Right, yeah, the geography element is key there. That's an excellent point. So I think this would maybe a good one to close on, but what does a successful customer call look like now that, you know, most sales meetings are, you know, remote, and most sales presentations are remote?
I would say, first of all, as you saw today with the sharing, so no technical issues, right? So that's the challenge of everybody who is now doing virtual calls. And I don't think there is one call where I'm attending where there's not a technical issue. Yeah, either the camera is not working, or the Wi-Fi is not playing the game, or not sharing, or yeah. But I think what makes it successful overall is that you are well prepared. So it's similar to value-based selling. You need to be prepared to have a clear agenda, to be efficient, and to have a clear target. That is something which is important. And then, of course, you need to have a certain interactivity. So don't make it a monologue, yeah, but really an interaction. So use the basics of value selling, actually, like active listening, open-ended questions, and all these little tools to make it as interactive as possible. Because don't forget, your customers are hiding behind the technology. It's much easier to hide behind a laptop than in a meeting room, right? So you need to kind of push them to get towards the interaction more than before. And really, one thing that I'm typically forcing is, not forcing, it sounds really harsh, but I'm really putting an emphasis that when I interact with potential customers, with leads or existing customers, is that they turn on the camera. Because already with the camera, you still have some gaps in body language, because you don't see the whole body, but at least you can see some reactions, which is really important as a salesperson as well.
Excellent. So I think that's a great place to finish. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Before you go, a quick reminder to pre-register for next month's webinar during the exit survey. This will be in 3 weeks. So for those in the audience that are in North America, the week before Thanksgiving, we're going to be joined by Todd Snellgrove. He'll be sharing best practices and value quantification and communication that drive a successful value selling program. So we're super excited about this one as well. And then just a quick note, you also have the chance in the survey to sign up for the Leverage Point Sales Velocity Series. It's a limited time program where we are sharing our most useful resources around increasing your organization's sales velocity. So feel free to sign up for that in the survey as well. And that's it for us today. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us, and a special thank you to Steve for joining us as well. And from all of us here at Leverage Point, have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.